You said it at lunch. You said it in the break room. You said it in a message you assumed would stay private, and it felt completely safe because it was just a coworker. But the moment you shared it, something happened that nobody told you about. The things you share with coworkers do not stay with coworkers. They travel up. And once they reach the level above you, they change how your career is managed permanently. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly how personal information moves through an organization and which 10 things, once shared, become permanent fixtures in how your manager makes decisions about your salary, your workload, and your future here. Once you see the mechanism, you will never read a casual work conversation the same way again. Organizations do not gather information about their employees through formal channels alone. HR does not know what you earn compared to your colleagues because they ran a survey. Your manager does not know you're unhappy because you filed a complaint. They know because information moves laterally, through coworkers, and then it moves up. This is not surveillance. It is something more ordinary and more difficult to defend against. It is conversation. The first thing you should never share with a coworker is your salary. Not because your employer wants to prevent it. In most places, you have the legal right to discuss it. But because the moment you share what you earn, that number travels. Here's how it works. You mention your salary to one trusted colleague. That colleague mentions it, not maliciously, to someone else during their own conversation. Within a week, your manager knows. And now your manager is managing a variable they were not supposed to have access to. They know whether you are paid above or below your peers. They know whether you know, and they will prepare for your next salary conversation accordingly. The second thing you should never share is that you're looking for another job. You mentioned it because the search is stressful and you needed to vent. You mentioned it to one person, but job search information has a short half-life in an office environment. Within 2 weeks, it has reached someone who will pass it to your manager, not to damage you, but because it's news, and news travels. Once your manager knows you're looking, you become a flight risk in their resource planning. Flight risks do not get the next high-visibility project. Flight risks do not go on the next promotion shortlist. You have not resigned, but you are being managed as though you already have. The third thing you should never share is your opinion of your manager. Not your concerns, not your frustrations, not even your mild irritations, because coworkers are not sealed containers, and they have their own relationships with your manager, some of which are closer than you know. The remark you made on a Tuesday will reach your manager by Friday. Not because your colleague is disloyal, because your manager asked how the team was feeling and your colleague told the truth. The fourth thing is your financial situation outside work, your debt level, your mortgage stress, the real reason you need this year's bonus. When your manager knows you are financially dependent on this job, the dynamic shifts. You become easier to retain without a raise. You become easier to load with additional work without complaint. Your leverage, your credible ability to walk away, has been quietly priced in. Here's the part nobody warns you about. You did not share this to hand them leverage. You shared it because you were stressed, and the conversation felt safe. But organizations are not built to protect that context. They are built to optimize for outcomes. And knowing an employee's financial pressure is useful information for any system optimizing for cost. The fifth thing is your health information. You mentioned the appointment, the diagnosis, the reason you have been tired lately. Health information, once shared, enters the informal file, the one that doesn't officially exist, but governs every quiet decision about reliability, availability, and long-term investment in your role. Your manager is not calculating whether to penalize you for being unwell. They are calculating risk, and you have just made yourself a variable in that calculation. The sixth thing is your relationship status or personal life difficulties, the separation, the difficult home situation, the reason you seem distracted. Personal instability, even temporary, registers as professional risk inside an organization, not because they don't care about you as a person, but because they are managing outputs, not people, and outputs require stable inputs. The seventh thing is how badly you want the promotion.
Wanting it is not the problem. Advertising how urgently you want it is. When your manager knows you're focused on the next level, they now hold something you want very much. And in every negotiation about your workload, your deadlines, your flexibility, that knowledge sits between you. The eighth thing is your opinion of your coworkers, who you think is underperforming, who you think is overrated, who you suspect is receiving preferential treatment. This is the most direct pipeline to your manager's awareness, because the person you critiqued have their own relationships, and criticism has a way of returning to its subject in a distorted form. But here's where it becomes more serious. The first 8 things operate on a short timeline. You share something, it travels, your manager adjusts their approach. The 9th and 10th things operate on a permanent timeline. The 9th thing is your walkaway number, the salary at which you would accept another offer, the figure that would make you leave, the number they would need to offer to retain you if it came to that. You mentioned it hypothetically. You said it as a frustrated aside during a difficult week, but that number is now in the system. If you are ever counteroffered, the offer will not be significantly more than that number. Your manager now knows the minimum it takes to keep you, and the minimum is what they will offer. The 10th thing is the reason you have stayed this long, the loyalty, the belief that effort and tenure are eventually rewarded, the sense that this organization recognizes what you contribute. When your manager knows you stayed because you believe the system will eventually work in your favor, they know you are not a flight risk. And employees who are not a flight risk are managed differently. Differently means less urgently. Differently means with more tolerance for a stalled promotion timeline. Differently means with confidence that you will absorb whatever workload arrives next without escalating. You did everything right. You were trying to build real relationships at work. You were being human inside a place that tells you to be professional and then penalizes you for being cold. You shared because sharing is how people connect. The problem was never your intention. The problem is that the organization you shared inside of was not built to protect your intentions. It was built to process information, and it processes all of it, including the things you never meant to submit. You were not naive. You were operating inside a system that was never fully explained to you. Here's what actually governs how information moves in an organization. Informal information is more actionable than formal information. What HR knows officially, they must act on officially, with documentation, with process, with accountability. What your manager knows informally, they can act on quietly, without a paper trail, without a conversation, without ever acknowledging they know. You are not being asked to become closed or cold or suspicious of every person you work with. You are being asked to understand the difference between a colleague and a confidant. Most of the people you work with are colleagues. Some of them are also friends, but the institution they work inside of is never your friend, and the things you say inside it do not disappear. They accumulate, they inform, they are consulted informally every time a decision is made about your name. Now you know. That's corporate GPS, the map they never handed you.